vice president. Sarah's the vice president of nursing, so we all know the vice president does the most work.
Alright, so I have a couple questions for everybody. Can all the women in the audience raise their hands, please? Alright, now who out of all of you women has been called a slut, a whore, a skank, or a bimbo? Alright, now where are all the men? Alright, that's cool. Men, if you have ever been called these terms, please raise your hands. From a very young age, we can't help but recognize the double standards of sexuality in our culture. A man who has sex is congratulated, commended, and high-fived, while women who do the same are scorned and shamed. Yet, even though we all recognize this injustice, what do we do about it? Usually, the answer is nothing. Until now. When I was 14 years old, I was hanging out with a friend. Those are quotation marks. When he pushed me down to my knees and unzipped his pants, at 14 years old, mind you, forcing himself toward me, I was fortunate enough to pull myself out of my flood of emotions, my shock, my horror, my anger, and to react quickly, physically fighting him off. And ironically, before he left me, he called me a slut. This was not the first time I had heard the term used towards me. Women and men alike use the word against others, usually women, to put them down. However, after my sexual assault, I began to believe it was true. I was a slut. I must have led him on. I must have sent mixed signals and messages. I should have been crystal clear with my intentions, or lack thereof. After all, men can't control their urges, can they? That's what we are taught. That women who never want sex must be the gatekeepers, the responsible ones, and push the men away. Or goodness, they will just keep trying because they just can't help it. I shouldn't have been so stupid as to let myself be alone with him. In short, I blame myself. I was ashamed and guilt-ridden, and therefore kept the experience entirely secret. It wasn't until attending the Violence Against Women Prevention Program as an incoming freshman that I began to identify the shame and guilt I experienced as due to our culture of victim blaming. And it wasn't until watching VOP presentations 3 more times during my job as an orientation leader that I recognized the experience for what it was: sexual assault. Still, it took another full year and my personal participation in the Violence Against Women Prevention Program as a facilitator, teaching some pretty stubborn students what I knew was true but could not apply to myself. What I have come to realize, mainly from preparing and fighting for the messages that SlutWalk supports, is that the circumstances, the choices I made, what I was wearing, do not matter. I was not asked, and when I spoke up, he did not listen. And when I kicked and pushed and yelled, he still didn't listen willingly. We are all victims of this culture, in which our society allows sexual assault, rape, and victim blaming to thrive. But if you recognize the truth, that the victim is never to blame, you are a survivor of this rape culture. No means no, maybe means no, and silence is not consent. I should not feel the desire to thank my partner for not feeling entitled to my body, for being a decent human being. But some days it seems individuals like these are few and far between. Today is not one of those days. Last year I sat sobbing at Take Back the Night, but was not willing to share my story. I didn't think it was enough. Bad enough, severe enough, extreme enough to warrant a presentation. I now know that my experience was too much. Anything at all is way too much. We should cry. We should yell, scream, shout, hate, complain, lash out. We can and we should, because it is all way too much. We should be pissed and angry and emotional because nothing like this should ever happen to anyone. I've had enough. We've had enough. It's time to take a stand.
Yeah!